Take two, because I lose track of what I'm talking about. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for watching. I'm going to do a quick review build video on my Amazon chassis special here. I did have a request from someone specifically to show how I built this and how I made it work, because he has this chassis setup, and I guess he's struggling with the build a little bit. So I just wanted to show you guys. I realized I never really did a full breakdown video of this, but I've used it quite a bit and it works extremely well. There's a few little quirks that I need to straighten out, and I'll show you guys. But regardless of what chassis you start with, hopefully this video can help you just pay attention to some of the setup and the geometry, and maybe it'll save you a little time and money in the long run. But look, a lot of times when you're using parts that aren't really sold as a kit to work together, there's going to be a lot of trial and error. You're going to put it together, you're going to think everything is good, and then you're going to put your motor in, the links are going to hit it, it's going to change something, and then you're back to square one. You got to pull it all apart again and change something around and get your pinion angles right. There's a lot that goes into doing a build like this, which is why it is nice, and most people just go with something like a VRD kit or a stance, or something that is sold to kind of work together, and they've done the homework for you. But what's the fun of that? You do learn a lot, and you can really customize your setup doing a build like this, and you can really kind of optimize it to what you want to do with it, right? The terrain that you have, the style of driving you want to do, you can kind of set it up more toward what works for you. And then you also have a one-of-a-kind truck. You don't just have the run-of-the-mill like VRD or stance or whatever element like everyone else does. So it's cool for that alone. But let me show you guys how I got this set up and what I'm running in it, and give you guys some tips. And yeah, stay tuned. So you'll notice here I'm running the J Concept Stage Killer body. I think it fits on here extremely nice. Paint job was kind of an experiment. This is actually using some dish soap on the inside. You start with the clear body on the inside, tape off your windows and stuff. You literally just drizzle Dawn dish detergent, dish soap onto the body, and it creates this pattern. And then you spray your backer color, which was black, immediately rinse it off in water, and all the soap comes off, and it removes, obviously you don't have any paint where that is. And then you spray any different colors on the rest of the clear. It came out really cool. I think for like a pretty easy paint job, I'm really happy with the way this thing turned out. Body fits on here very nice. I'll show you what I got. These sliders under here are custom made. I made them out of Kydex plastic. Let me show you. This is Kydex plastic. You can get it in all different size sheets. You can get different thicknesses, and it's flexible. When you heat it, it's easy. It almost turns into like a leather-like consistency when it's hot. Use like a heat gun, and you bend it. When it cools off, it retains its shape. So you can make really cool shapes like this. You see these sliders I made, these boat-style sliders, fit the contour of the body nicely, and it's nice and slippery. It's very slippery material, so it's perfect for any type of slider material. So really happy with the way those turned out. So this is the chassis, and it is a Who Crawler chassis. It showed up in a Who Crawler box. It wasn't advertised as Who Crawler. I'll link it up down below. I'm sure these are still available on Amazon, but extremely nice, thick chassis rails, nice finish on the carbon. And this is also the trans that is available in the listing as well. It is a 2-low trans setup, all nicely rubber sealed bearings, steel gears throughout, and it's just really good quality, nice and smooth. I added a little bit of grease inside. I pulled it apart and checked it. Tolerances are excellent. It's just a really nice setup. The trans did come with this Delrin plastic skid, which was very nice. Let me show you the skid and the sliders that the chassis came. So the chassis comes with an aluminum skid, more for like an axial 3-gear setup, and it comes with these aluminum sliders. You can see I ran them briefly. I'm not a huge fan of aluminum on any kind of underbelly part. It just doesn't slide over the rocks as well. So I much prefer the setup that I made here, and the Delrin skid that it comes with is just much better suited for crawling over rocks. So I'm running this with Capra axles, 4-wheel steer Capra axles, and I'm going to point out one of the issues right from the start here, and it's kind of the only issue I have with this truck, is the clearance back here. You can see this chassis supposedly is based on an Element design. If you look at the Element, so if you look at an Element, I just happen to have I don't want to spill my coffee here. I just happen to have a gatekeeper here. The shape of the chassis, kind of hard to see, but that little drop down in the front, the The rear does have a drop down, but of course it's because it's angled up here more than the Element is. But supposedly this chassis is a direct fit onto here in terms of all the bolt holes lining up. It does have an angled skid, so that's a slight difference. But the problem when you start running different axles, and mainly because this is a servo on axle. If you were doing a chassis mounted servo, this wouldn't be a necessary problem. Maybe you'd run into other problems, I'm not sure. But look what happens here. Because of this drop down in the front, you see how that link rubs? And it actually, you can see the shock moving there. It extends the shock. So if you're up on a climb like this and you're turning, it's actually going to disrupt the chassis a little bit. And it could be enough to just topple you over. So I'm not crazy about that. And I've tried adjusting these every different way, adjusting the top and bottom links so that the angle changes. And I got it about as good as it's going to get, and it still rubs. So the easiest solution, cut this off. If you don't care about the bumper, and the body I'm running doesn't necessarily need, I can do a little extension piece here straight out and make a custom bumper, which is probably what I'll do just on the front. But I think I'm just going to chop the chassis right at the edge here, so it eliminates this drop down and it just provides clearance for that. Now the exact same thing in the rear, because I'm running rear steer. If you're not running rear steer, this is not going to be an issue, but you see the exact same issue, right? The shock, you can see the shock moving, the whole axle tilts down. So it's just going to disrupt everything. If you're at that extreme of an angle and you're steering fully to one side, it's just going to rub. So same deal in the back. I can just hack the back of the chassis off here. So I think that's my plan with this. Again, that's going to be very dependent on what axles you're running. And if you're doing four-wheel steer and stuff, I'm not going to say that that's going to be an issue, but it could be. So let me just give you guys a quick setup here. For the links I'm running, if you're running Capra axles on this, and again, this is going to be dependent on what wheelbase you want to have set up. So, but just real quick, front uppers are 110 millimeter, front lowers 130, rear uppers are 118, rear lowers are 137. And what that got me was pretty nice pinion angles that don't really change all that much as you cycle it. I'm running these high clearance links. I'll throw a link to everything I can find still available below. These are just RC Lions links, and I think I used two different kits to achieve this, so I'll link them up, but two different wheelbase lengths. Just, you're better off buy both of them, and you'll have whatever links and extra rod ends and stuff that you need. That would be my first tip. Buy more stuff than you think you're going to need. Worst case, you could always return it. Amazon's pretty good with returns. So that's nice. But if you have it, it's just going to save you a lot of time just to open up a new pack and find a link that fits better. For link mount positions, you know, the lowers, of course, are on the skid. The uppers on the front, I'll show you there. It is, I guess, second one down from the top, furthest to the rear. And on the rear, it's in the top position. And in the rear, it's on the top position, center hole. But again, this could change depending on what axles you're running and what length links you have. So, but again, just focus more on just getting clearance for everything, getting a nice suspension cycle here, and keeping your pinion angles correct. And just so that nothing really binds. These are just SCX 10.3 drive shafts. I can't remember, maybe one was off of a Gladiator, but you're just going to have to measure and figure out which one you need. You can trim these a little bit. So I like these drive shafts. The only thing I don't like is the little couplers here are very pricey. You can buy a full set of drive shafts off like Jenny's RC or any of these RC kind of recycling places. You'll probably find a better deal to buy a whole kit that comes with all of the adapters and stuff that you need. Other than that, I'm just running some Amazon 35 kg DS servos. These work extremely well. They got plenty of power, especially if you run them up on 8.4 volts. These are just Capra shocks for now. I do want to run some Desert Lizards at some point with the internal spring, at least in the front. I'm just running these stretchy hair bands on the front shocks just to keep the front sucked down on steep climbs. These work okay. These shocks just tend to leak quite a bit, so I think I'm going to swap them out for something else. Now, here's the other thing when it comes to this build. I initially wanted to run this with a Fusion Pro, which is a 540 style, 540 size can with a built-in ESC, as you know. Problem with that, there's really no way to make that thing fit without making a lot of concessions. You would have to run your links to the outside of your chassis, which screws with the angles a lot of it, makes it a lot and makes it really difficult to set it up. Even if you get that right, what you end up with, I was getting issues where the link here was hitting the motor can under compression. It was just extremely difficult. The only way I got it even close was to put spacers under the transmission and raise it up 10 millimeters. And I didn't like that because it puts the drive shafts at more of an angle. And then also, I built this to be a low CG crawler, right? And I bought a low CG trans. So why am I going to raise the heaviest part of the vehicle up along with the motor and everything else up? It just didn't sit right with me, no pun intended. It sat right on the vehicle, didn't sit right with me. I didn't like that, so I completely changed direction here, and I went with a little Outrunner motor. You'll see here I went with the Rhino Crawler RMS 2220 kV motor, running this on 3S, the little Rhino ESC. Bought that as a kind of a combo kit, and it works really well. There's definitely some setup involved with this. I was getting a lot of heat. And maybe I'll post up the settings that I have on here if you guys are having issues. If you run this combo, I got it to work really well and I eliminated the heat. There's a lot of kind of oddball settings in here. Part of the reason I wanted to go with the Fusion, the Hobbywing Fusion, it's like set it and forget it. That thing works so good out of the box. It's a no-brainer and it's a really good deal. These can work extremely well. I just think they're a lot more fussy with the setup. But yeah, overall, the nice thing is it takes up so little room that you can kind of fit it in everywhere. I don't have any spacers under this trans, and everything on here works well, except for, like I said, this is the only issue, is the link hitting the chassis front and rear. So, but I'm going to correct that. Maybe I'll have a follow-up video and show you guys what I do in terms of building a bumper. As far as everything else, with these capper axles, because they're so wide, I like to run these wheels. These are just off Amazon. These are carbon wheels. I forget what brand they are, but they have a lot of positive offset, so they sit in further. So I ended up with a little bit less track width, and they are very nice wheels. And I'm just running these Endura comp pins with some Endura green silicone inserts, and they work nice. I made a little battery tray here out of Kydex. Same deal with the plastic, just made 2 bends in it, mounted it to the chassis. And you don't have a ton of room. Just the way I have this body fitting on here, I left this little additional piece just to kind of support it on the rails. So I could trim that and mount the ESC down here probably, but it's something I'm going to mess with a little bit in the future. It's fine up there. It's pretty lightweight. What else can I say about this? Depending on the motor you go with, just, get your gearing. I want to put a little bit bigger pinion on here, a little bit more wheel speed. And then, body mounts, look, it's going to be dependent on what type of body you run, but I like, these are just little Endura aluminum body mounts, and just mounted them up to the chassis up here. On the rear, I had to get a little creative because the body angles down in the back, and these are just some plastic. I forget, I think I got these off Amazon too, and just ran 2 screws in them, ran them back at an angle, and everything fits on here. Very nice. Just kind of snaps on, fits nice. But yeah, see what I'm talking about here. It kind of even looks goofy. It'll look better if I cut this chassis back here, and I could make a little bumper, but honestly, there's not even much of a point because the body doesn't even come close to touching anything. So unless I run a bumper way out, I don't really need anything on the back. On the front, I think I'm going to hack this and just run. I might make a little bumper, but it's almost the same deal. Like, the wheels stick out further than the body, which is nice for approach and departure angles. But so yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. If you have any other questions, hit me up in the comments. I wish I could remember the guy's name who asked me specifics about this build. I am just running some brass portal weights up front. Let me get you guys a weight on this. So this build, as you see it, just wait for the camera to stop shaking. So this build, as you see it, no battery, 5 pounds, 10 ounces. So it's pretty lightweight. And that's even with the portal weights there. And I have brass servo mounts front and rear, just because that is kind of a weak point on these axles. That's about it. 30% overdrive to the front with that transmission. So that's nice, works extremely well. Yeah, stay tuned. I'll have some running video of this coming up. I have some already. Check out my playlist. I do have some more info on this when I initially built it and some running video you guys will see. Yeah, check out my playlists for this truck. I will link up the playlist below too, because I forget what I named the playlist. I don't know if it was Amazon build. I forget. I didn't really ever come up with a good name for this. But overall, I really like it, and ended up being a little more expensive to build than I initially thought, because I had to go a different direction and buy the Outrunner and the ESC, and all these little things add up. And that's the thing I want to say with doing a custom build like this. You're going to need more than what you initially think, because you're going to have things that you buy that you end up not using, or maybe you get to a point on the build and then something doesn't fit right and you have to go back and start over. You already opened the packages, you can't return them. That's why I was saying buy 2 sets of links for different length wheelbases. Buy a bunch of different fasteners, get some different kits off Amazon. If you want to use stainless screws, buy like an M3 screw kit with all different sizes. If you want to use these aluminum washers, pick out whatever color you want, buy a bunch of those. All these little things are just going to make this so much easier when it comes time to do the full build on this. So you're not just waiting for a little part here, a little part there. Maybe you have different length shocks you can play around with. Just all these things are going to make a difference ultimately in the setup. Drive shafts. If you don't want to run these drive shafts, I just found some really nice steel ones by Meus Racing, Meus. I'll link them up down below too. They're extremely nice, and they were like $20 for 2 drive shafts. So very inexpensive way to get your drive shafts together, way cheaper than what I did here. But you can, if you're smart about this, you can optimize this and keep the cost pretty low. The chassis, the trans. If you don't need the Rhino ESC, you don't need the Rhino Outrunner. You can pick up like a Surpass or some other brand Outrunner. And then there's other options now for ESCs that will work fine with those. So you can do this a little bit less expensive than what you see here. And ultimately, like I mentioned at the start, it's a fun project to get involved with. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn a lot about link, the relationship between link mounts and positions and lengths with the geometry and how it affects the pinion angles when it compresses and extends. And then you're going to go out and run it and you're going to be like, holy crap, that doesn't work, and go back and redo it again. But so look, it's a learning experience. It's a lot of fun. I highly recommend, if you've never done a full custom build, just buy stuff and experiment, and you're going to come up with something that's cool in the end. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. Any questions, hit me up in the comments below, and stay tuned. I'm going to have a lot more videos on, everything. So later, guys.